The Arabian sun blazed mercilessly over the endless expanse of desert. In the shimmering heat waves, a convoy of black SUVs sped down a rugged dirt road, kicking up plumes of sand and dust. At the head of the convoy sat Khalid al-Munir, the man who had become a phantom to intelligence agencies worldwide. His sharp, hawk-like eyes scanned the horizon, his expression calm but calculating. Inside the lead vehicle, his second-in-command, Fard, handed him a satellite phone. "It's done," Fard said in Arabic, a hint of pride in his voice. Khalid took the phone and listened as the operative on the other end relayed the news. The American cargo ship Red Horizon had been successfully intercepted in the Gulf of Oman. The ship's crew was subdued, and the valuable cargo was now en route to one of Khalid's hidden strongholds deep in the mountains. Khalid smirked. "Excellent work. Ensure the cargo is secured and leave no trace of the crew. We don't want survivors reporting back to their masters." As the call ended, Fard glanced at his leader nervously. "You believe this will provoke the Americans?" Khalid's smirk widened. "Of course. That is the point. They've meddled in our lands for too long. Now, they'll know what it feels like to lose something valuable. The message will be clear. They are not invincible." Meanwhile, halfway across the globe in Washington, D.C., the Pentagon was in chaos. News of the hijacking had reached the upper echelons of the U.S. government within hours. The Red Horizon wasn't just any cargo ship. It carried classified military technology that, in the wrong hands, could destabilize entire regions. General Sarah Collins, a no-nonsense strategist known for her decisive leadership, stormed into the Situation Room. The president, flanked by his national security advisor and a handful of other key officials, turned to her with a grim expression. "General," the president said, "tell me you have good news." Collins shook her head. "I wish I did, sir. The ship's last known location was here." She pointed to a spot on the map projected on the screen. "Based on the trajectory, we believe it's been diverted to a port controlled by Khalid al-Munir's forces. If that cargo reaches his stronghold, it'll be almost impossible to recover." The president's fist slammed onto the table, startling some of the junior aides in the room. "This is a direct assault on our nation. Khalid has been a thorn in our side for too long, and now he thinks he can humiliate us. I want a plan, General. Something bold. Something that sends a message." Collins didn't hesitate. "Understood, sir. I'll assemble a team immediately." 1,000 miles away, Captain Ryan Carter stood on the deck of his small boat off the Florida Keys, enjoying a rare day off. The turquoise waters shimmered in the sunlight as Ryan cast his fishing line into the sea. His muscular frame and weathered face bore the marks of years spent in the service of his country. As he reeled in a modest catch, his phone buzzed on the boat's console. Glancing at the screen, Ryan frowned. The call wasn't from a number he recognized, but the prefix told him it was coming directly from the Pentagon. "Captain Carter," he answered, already sensing his day off was about to end. "This is General Sarah Collins," the voice on the other end said, her tone brisk. "We've got a situation, and I need my best operator on this. Are you available?" "Do I have a choice?" Ryan replied with a dry chuckle, already pulling up the boat's anchor. Collins didn't laugh. "Not really. I'll send you the details, but pack your gear and head to the airfield. A plane will be waiting for you in 2 hours." By the time Ryan arrived at the undisclosed military base, the rest of the team had already been briefed. In the sterile, dimly lit operations room, he met his team for the mission. First was Daniels, the tech wizard who could crack any system and had an annoying habit of making jokes in tense situations. Beside him stood Morales, a quiet sniper whose icy demeanor masked a fierce loyalty to his comrades. Johnson, the demolition expert, was grinning ear to ear, clearly excited about the prospect of blowing something up. Finally, there was Emily Parker, a CIA operative with a reputation for resourcefulness and an impressive command of multiple languages. "Glad you could join us, Captain," Collins said as Ryan entered the room. She pointed to a map on the screen. "Here's the situation. Khalid al-Munir and his men have taken control of the Red Horizon and its cargo. We believe it's now en route to his stronghold here. She tapped a spot on the map deep in the mountainous regions of the Middle East. The stronghold is heavily fortified, but there's a weak point here. Collins zoomed in on the satellite imagery, highlighting a blind spot in the compound's defenses. Your mission is simple. Infiltrate, secure the cargo, and neutralize Khalid. If possible, bring him back alive. But if that's not an option, she let the implication hang in the air. Ryan studied the map, his sharp mind already formulating a plan. What about extraction? Once we're inside, how do we get out? You'll have air support on standby, Collins replied. But you'll need to secure a landing zone first. This isn't going to be easy, Carter. Khalid's men are highly trained, and they know the terrain better than we do. Good, Ryan said with a faint smile. I like a challenge. As the team boarded the military transport plane that would take them to the region, the gravity of the mission began to sink in. They weren't just recovering stolen technology. They were sending a message to anyone who dared to challenge American resolve. Sitting in the dimly lit cabin, Ryan glanced around at his team. Despite their outward confidence, he knew the risks they were facing. But he also knew one thing for certain. Failure wasn't an option. Unbeknownst to them, Khalid was already preparing for their arrival. In his mountain fortress, he stood before his men, addressing them with fiery determination. The Americans will come for what is theirs, he said. They always do. But this time, they will find nothing but death waiting for them. We will show the world that even the mighty can fall. His men cheered, their voices echoing through the cavernous halls of the stronghold. Khalid smiled, confident in his defenses. He believed he was untouchable. But he was about to learn a hard lesson. You do not mess with Americans. The night was dark and the air heavy with tension as Captain Ryan Carter and his team made their way toward Khalid al-Munir's stronghold. The mountains loomed like ancient sentinels in the distance, their jagged peaks cutting against the starry sky. The team, dressed in tactical gear and cloaked in night vision, moved silently through the rocky terrain, each step carefully calculated. Their transport helicopter had dropped them miles away from the fortress, ensuring that they would approach under the radar. The wind howled through the valleys, masking the faint sound of their boots on the ground. They had learned from years of experience to trust no one but each other, and every instinct told them that this mission would test their skills to the absolute limit. Ryan led the way, his mind sharp and focused. He scanned the horizon as they moved through the rugged landscape, his eyes always alert for any signs of movement. Behind him, Daniels and Emily worked together to disable a set of nearby surveillance drones that might compromise their approach. Daniels, hunched over a laptop, muttered, "Got it. We're clear for the next few miles." "Good work," Ryan whispered, his voice barely audible against the howling wind. He motioned for them to keep moving. As they neared the fortress, the faint glow of lights in the distance became more pronounced, outlining the structure's massive walls. The stronghold was a fortress, perched atop a cliff that offered a commanding view of the surrounding area. Khalid's men had clearly thought of everything. A fortified compound with guard towers, razor wire, and a network of security cameras. It would be nearly impossible to breach undetected, but that was why they were here. They weren't just a team. They were the best of the best. "All right, people," Ryan said in a low voice, gathering them in a tight circle. "We have one shot at this. Daniels, you're on comms. I need you to override their security system so we can slip in unnoticed. Morales, you're on Overwatch. Set up for sniping. Johnson, you're on demolition. We'll need a diversion to get in. Emily, you're with me. Let's make sure we get the cargo and get out. Any questions?" The team nodded in unison, each knowing their role and the stakes at hand. The first hurdle was the outer perimeter. Daniels worked quickly, his fingers flying over the keys of his handheld device as he hacked into the fortress's security grid. His face was lit only by the pale blue light of the screen. "Give me 5 minutes," Daniels muttered. I need to disable the exterior cameras, or they'll spot us the second we get close. Ryan watched the horizon, alert for any signs of movement. The wind had picked up, making it more difficult to hear footsteps, but it also made their approach more difficult to track. "Take your time," Ryan said, trying to mask the impatience in his voice. Every minute they spent outside the compound was a minute they were exposed. The minutes dragged on. Every crunch of gravel underfoot sent a jolt of tension through Ryan's body. He knew Khaled's men were likely watching the perimeter, waiting for any signs of intrusion. Finally, Daniels exhaled sharply. "We're in. The cameras are looped. They won't see us coming. Move out," Ryan commanded, leading them into the shadows. The compound loomed ahead. Ryan knew that getting past the first line of defense was only the beginning. They would need to be stealthy if they wanted to reach the heart of the stronghold undetected. The walls were high, made of reinforced concrete, and every inch was monitored by surveillance equipment. Their only chance was to use the weak point Daniels had identified earlier, a gap in the eastern wall, hidden by a large cluster of boulders. As they approached, the sound of voices carried through the air. Khaled's men were patrolling the area. Ryan motioned for everyone to stop, dropping to his stomach behind the rocks. They lay motionless, blending into the darkness as the guards passed by without noticing them. Once the coast was clear, they moved quickly, using the shadows to their advantage. The team made their way to the breach in the wall and slipped through, entering the compound undetected. Inside, the temperature was stifling. The walls of the stronghold were thick, almost oppressive, and the air reeked of sweat and stale smoke. Ryan could hear the distant sounds of voices echoing through the halls, their footsteps heavy on the stone floors. "Let's move," Ryan whispered, gesturing for the team to follow. They made their way down a narrow corridor, keeping their footfalls light and deliberate. Ryan's eyes flicked to every door and corner as they passed, his instincts guiding them through the maze of the compound. They were close now. The cargo they had come for was stored in a secured room at the heart of the stronghold, guarded by Khaled's most trusted men. In the control room, Khaled al-Munir paced impatiently. His mind was racing, aware that the Americans were likely already inside. The intelligence had confirmed the presence of a strike team on the move, but he had expected them to be much slower. His forces were well armed and prepared for an attack, but it had never occurred to him that the Americans would act with such speed and precision. He glanced at the large screen on the wall, which displayed various security feeds from around the compound. The grainy footage showed nothing out of the ordinary, but Khaled knew better than to trust appearances. "Prepare the men," he ordered, his voice cold and commanding. "The Americans are here. They will regret ever stepping foot in this place." Ryan and his team had reached the heart of the compound. The cargo was secured in a reinforced vault, guarded by 2 armed soldiers. Ryan motioned for Emily to take the left, while he moved to the right. They would incapacitate the guards silently, retrieve the equipment, and exit without leaving a trace. "On my mark," Ryan whispered. The team nodded in unison. Ryan waited until the 2 guards turned their backs, then signaled. In a blur of movement, Emily and Ryan rushed forward, neutralizing the guards with swift, practiced strikes. "Clear," Ryan whispered, checking the vault door. It was locked, but Daniels had already prepared for this. A few seconds later, the door clicked open, revealing the cargo, crates filled with advanced weaponry and military-grade drones. This was the prize they had come for. "Take what we need," Ryan said. "We're not here to steal everything, just the important stuff." As the team began to load the crates onto the transport gear, Ryan felt a shiver of anticipation. They were about to complete the mission, but they still had one more challenge ahead: extraction. But even as they prepared to leave, Ryan knew that Khaled was already setting his trap. The stillness of the stronghold's heart was suddenly shattered by the distant echo of boots pounding on stone. Ryan Carter's instincts flared, and his grip on the assault rifle tightened. He exchanged a quick glance with Emily, who was already gesturing to the others, signaling for them to finish loading the critical crates of stolen military technology. "Move," Ryan hissed under his breath, but the words barely left his lips when the first explosion ripped through the air, sending a violent shock wave through the compound. The ground trembled beneath them as debris fell from the ceiling. "Get ready," Johnson shouted from the back of the room, grinning as if he were having the time of his life. The demolition expert had set the explosive charges strategically along the corridor, knowing the explosion would trigger chaos, buying them precious minutes to escape. But Ryan knew this was a double-edged sword. The noise would mask their exit, but it would also alert college forces that the Americans had infiltrated the stronghold. They would be ready for the escape. "We need to move faster," Ryan said, already pulling a large crate off the stack. "This is our only window." As they moved toward the back exit of the vault, the once quiet hallways of the compound were now a battlefield. Gunfire echoed in the distance as college men scrambled to mobilize. The team moved quickly, silently, slipping through the maze of corridors they had scouted earlier. The sounds of running footsteps grew louder, as if the entire fortress had come alive, every soldier now on alert. "Ryan, we've got company," Daniels whispered into his earpiece, his voice steady despite the chaos. "2 guards up ahead, coming around the corner. I'll distract them." Before Ryan could respond, Daniels had already slipped into the shadows. Moments later, the unmistakable sound of muffled gunfire rang out. 2 bodies hit the ground with barely a whisper. Daniels was already on the move, returning to the group. "Clear," Daniels said, wiping his brow. "Let's move," Ryan commanded again, knowing they couldn't afford to lose any more time. The narrow passageways of the compound were now filled with a sense of impending doom. Ryan's heart raced, but his focus was unwavering. With the crates of military technology secured, their next objective was simple: get out. But the compound's labyrinthine layout was designed to thwart any intruder. The back exit wasn't as accessible as they had hoped. It was protected by a reinforced steel door and more armed guards. "Another way out?" Ryan asked, his voice calm despite the mounting pressure. "Actually, yes," Emily responded. "I hacked into the security system earlier. There's a maintenance tunnel leading to the south gate. It's not as heavily guarded, and it should give us a direct line to the extraction point." Ryan nodded. "Lead the way." The team turned down a side corridor and descended a spiral staircase into the dimly lit underground tunnel. The air was cooler here, but the tension was thicker than ever. The faint hum of generators and the smell of damp earth added to the feeling of being in enemy territory. As they descended deeper, they encountered another obstacle: a locked metal door. It was a final barrier between them and their escape route. Ryan could hear the distant sounds of enemy soldiers converging on their position. The seconds ticked by as the pressure mounted. "Daniels, can you get this open?" Ryan asked, his voice edged with urgency. Daniels knelt before the door, pulling out his hacking device. "Give me 30 seconds, he said, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. Ryan peered out into the tunnel, watching for any signs of movement. The last thing they needed was to be caught with their backs against a dead end. "Almost there," Daniels muttered. A few seconds later, the door clicked open with a quiet groan, revealing the dark passage beyond. "Good work," Ryan said, ushering the team through the door. They entered the maintenance tunnel, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick concrete walls. The dim emergency lights illuminated the path ahead, but as they moved, the sound of shouting soldiers grew louder. The chase was on. As the team neared the south gate, the air seemed to grow heavier, thick with the imminent threat of discovery. They could hear the sound of boots rushing in their direction. Ryan signaled for everyone to halt. They crouched low against the walls of the tunnel, listening carefully. "They're getting closer," Emily said, her voice barely audible. "Stay quiet," Ryan ordered. For what felt like an eternity, the team held their breath, waiting as the enemy soldiers passed by the entrance to the tunnel, unaware of the Americans hiding just a few feet away. Once the sound of footsteps faded, Ryan motioned for them to continue. The team emerged from the tunnel just in time. The night air was cooler now, and the desert sky stretched out before them, vast and unforgiving. They were nearly there. The south gate was just 100 meters away, but the last stretch would be the most perilous. Khalid's forces had set up a perimeter around the exit. Soldiers were stationed in fortified positions, scanning the area with night vision. Ryan knew that if they didn't act fast, they would be trapped. "Daniels, can you disrupt their comms?" Ryan asked. "On it," Daniels replied, already pulling out his device. Within seconds, the enemy's communications went dead, throwing the soldiers into confusion. "Go, go, go!" Ryan barked. The team rushed forward, using the cover of darkness to their advantage. Morales, perched at the rear, provided overwatch, picking off any guards who posed a threat. The rest of the team moved quickly, reaching the gate in record time. Just as they neared the gate, gunfire erupted from behind. Ryan spun around, narrowly dodging a bullet that slammed into the concrete beside him. "Get down!" he shouted, pushing Emily into cover. The sound of rapid gunfire filled the air as Khalid's men launched a final assault. Ryan returned fire, but the situation was becoming desperate. They had to reach the extraction point. "Move to the chopper now!" Ryan commanded, pushing forward. With their backs against the wall, the team sprinted toward the designated landing zone. The black helicopter was already hovering above, its blades slicing through the air as the pilot maneuvered into position. One by one, the team jumped into the helicopter, their hearts pounding in their chests. As Ryan jumped in last, he heard the familiar whir of the helicopter's blades picking up speed. The extraction was underway. But even as they lifted off, Ryan knew one thing for certain. This wouldn't be the last time they'd face Khalid and his forces. The war was far from over. As the helicopter disappeared into the night sky, Ryan looked out the side window, his mind already shifting to the next mission. He could feel the weight of the stolen cargo on his shoulders, the knowledge that this would be a turning point. But one thing was clear. The message had been sent. As the helicopter sliced through the night sky, Ryan Carter sat in silence, his eyes scanning the horizon. The adrenaline of the mission hadn't left him yet, though his body ached from the tension. The stolen cargo was secured in the back of the helicopter, carefully strapped down by Johnson and Daniels. Emily sat across from Ryan, reloading her weapon with a steady hand, her face blank but her mind visibly racing. For a moment, the rhythmic thrum of the helicopter blades drowned out everything else. But Ryan's instincts wouldn't let him relax. He knew better than to believe the fight was over. Khalid al-Munir wasn't the kind of man to let a team of operatives waltz into his stronghold, take what was his, and leave unscathed. "Pilot," Ryan called through his comms headset. "What's the ETA?" 15 minutes, Captain," the pilot replied. "But we've got a problem. Radar's picking up movement. Could be enemy aircraft." Ryan's jaw tightened. "How many?" "3 bogies, closing in fast. Looks like attack helicopters." Ryan glanced at Emily, who had overheard the exchange. "Khalid," she said simply. "Of course," Ryan muttered. He turned to the rest of the team. "Strap in and get ready. Khalid's sending company. They're not letting us leave without a fight." In the mountain stronghold they had just escaped, Khalid al-Munir stood in the control room, barking orders into a radio. His face was a mask of cold fury. "The Americans think they can humiliate us," Khalid growled. "They think they can steal from us and walk away alive? Send the gunships. I want that helicopter destroyed, and I want the cargo recovered. No survivors." His men scrambled to carry out his commands. 3 attack helicopters lifted off from the compound, their engines roaring as they ascended into the night. Khalid watched them go, his heart burning with rage. He had underestimated the Americans once, but he wouldn't make that mistake again. Back in the air, Ryan and his team prepared for what they all knew was coming. Morales took a position at the open door of the helicopter, his sniper rifle at the ready. Johnson and Daniels hastily checked the crates, searching for anything they could use against the incoming attackers. "Found something," Johnson said, pulling out a small missile launcher from one of the crates. He grinned, hefting it onto his shoulder. "Looks like Christmas came early." "Save the jokes," Ryan said sharply. "We've got 3 hostiles inbound. Morales, take the high ground. Johnson, you're on anti-air. Daniels, get me eyes on their approach." "On it," Daniels replied, tapping furiously at his portable tablet. The first enemy helicopter came into view, its searchlights cutting through the darkness like glowing blades. Ryan could see the unmistakable outline of mounted cannons on its sides, primed and ready to fire. "Here we go," Morales muttered, lining up his sights. The enemy chopper opened fire, a hail of bullets streaking through the sky toward their transport. The pilot banked hard to the left, narrowly avoiding the barrage. Inside the cabin, the team braced themselves as the helicopter tilted sharply. "Morales, take the shot," Ryan shouted. The sniper didn't hesitate. With calm precision, he squeezed the trigger. The bullet pierced the enemy helicopter's cockpit, shattering the glass and striking the pilot. The chopper wobbled violently before spiraling out of control and crashing into the mountainside below. "One down," Morales said, already reloading. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining 2 helicopters were closing in fast, their weapons lighting up the night sky. Johnson fired the missile launcher, but the enemy choppers were quick, dodging the projectile with ease. "They're adapting," Emily said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Not for long," Ryan replied. "Johnson, take out their weapon systems. We need to level the playing field." Johnson fired another missile, this time aiming for the tail of the second helicopter. The explosion was deafening, and the chopper spun out of control, its tail severed. It crashed into the desert in a fiery blaze. "2 down!" Johnson shouted triumphantly. The last enemy helicopter, however, was proving to be a tougher adversary. Its pilot was skilled, maneuvering expertly to stay out of range, while launching an unrelenting barrage of gunfire. The transport helicopter shook violently as bullets tore through its hull. "We're taking too much fire," the pilot yelled. "I can't keep us in the air much longer." Ryan's mind raced. They couldn't afford to lose the cargo, not to mention their lives. He looked at Daniels, who was still working on his tablet. "Daniels, tell me you've got something," Ryan demanded. Daniels grinned. "Oh, I've got something. That last crate we opened, it's got a drone prototype. Fully armed, fully operational. Deploy it," Ryan ordered. Daniels quickly activated the drone, launching it out of the helicopter. The small, sleek device zipped through the air, its onboard AI locking onto the enemy helicopter. "Target acquired," Daniels said, his fingers dancing over the controls. The drone fired a missile, striking the enemy helicopter dead on. The explosion lit up the sky, and the chopper disintegrated into a shower of debris. "That's the last of them," Daniels said, exhaling in relief. As the helicopter continued its journey to the extraction point, the team finally allowed themselves to breathe. The stolen cargo was safe, and they had survived yet another deadly encounter with Khaled's forces. But Ryan knew this wasn't over. Khaled wouldn't stop until he had his revenge. "We'll be seeing him again," Emily said, echoing Ryan's thoughts. Ryan nodded. "Next time, we end it." The team sat in silence as the helicopter approached the base, each of them replaying the events of the mission in their minds. They had achieved the impossible, but they knew the fight was far from over. For now, though, they had won, and they had sent a clear message to anyone who dared to challenge them. The morning air at the extraction base was crisp, though tension hung heavy, like a storm waiting to break. Ryan Carter stepped out of the transport helicopter, his boots crunching against the gravel landing pad. Around him, the hum of activity was constant. Black SUVs with tinted windows arrived and departed. Soldiers marched with precision, and intelligence officers barked orders through comms. Ryan's team disembarked behind him, each member moving with the calculated efficiency of seasoned operatives. They had made it out of Khaled al-Munir's fortress alive, the stolen military cargo secured, but none of them were celebrating. They knew this mission was far from over. Standing near the hangar was General Marcus Bennett, a towering man whose mere presence demanded attention. His crisp uniform was adorned with medals, though his sharp eyes spoke louder than any decoration. He was waiting for them, arms crossed, a grim expression etched onto his face. "Carter," the general called out as Ryan approached. "You and your team have done impressive work, but we have a bigger problem." "Bigger than Khalid?" Ryan asked, raising an eyebrow. Bennett gestured for them to follow him into a nearby command center. The room was a hive of activity, with large screens displaying live satellite feeds and intelligence reports. One screen showed the wreckage of Khalid's helicopters scattered across the mountains. Another displayed a detailed map of a desert region with red markers indicating known enemy positions. "Khalid isn't retreating," Bennett said, his voice low but commanding. "In fact, he's doubling down. He knows we've taken his cargo, and he's taken it personally. Our latest intel indicates he's mobilizing his forces for an all-out retaliation. And this time, he's not just targeting us. He's going after civilians." Emily's face hardened. "What's the target?" Bennett pointed to the map. "A refugee camp near the border. Khalid's planning to launch an airstrike using a stockpile of chemical weapons. If he succeeds, thousands of innocent lives will be lost, and it will destabilize the entire region." A heavy silence fell over the room as the weight of the situation sank in. Ryan clenched his fists. He had dealt with men like Khalid before, ruthless, calculating individuals who thrived on fear and chaos. But this was different. This was terrorism on a scale that couldn't be ignored. "What's the plan?" Ryan asked, his voice steady. Bennett's gaze shifted to him. His eyes filled with resolve. "We strike first. Khalid's main base is here." He pointed to a remote desert location on the map. "This is where he's storing the chemical weapons and the drones he plans to use for the attack. Your mission is simple. Infiltrate, destroy the weapons, and eliminate Khalid once and for all." "Understood," Ryan said, already formulating a plan in his head. "I'm assigning additional support for this mission," Bennett added. "We'll have air support on standby, but you'll need to go in on the ground. This is a high-risk operation, Carter. Failure is not an option." Ryan nodded. "We won't fail, sir." That night, the team prepared for what they knew would be the most dangerous mission of their lives. The briefing was quick but thorough. The plan was to insert via stealth helicopters, neutralize Khalid's defenses, and plant explosives on the chemical weapons stockpile. They had less than 24 hours to act before Khalid launched his attack. As they geared up, Ryan checked in with each member of his team. "You ready, Morales?" Ryan asked as the sniper loaded his gear. Morales smirked. "I've been waiting for this since we left his fortress." Time to finish what we started. Ryan turned to Emily. "What about you?" Emily tightened the straps on her vest, her expression determined. "Let's make sure he doesn't get another chance to hurt anyone." Daniels, busy fine-tuning the drones they had taken from Khalid's cargo, looked up and grinned. These beauties are going to give Khalid the surprise of his life. And then there was Johnson, humming to himself as he packed enough explosives to level a small city. "I've got all the fireworks we'll need," he said with a wink. Ryan allowed himself a small smile. They were ready. The stealth helicopters flew low over the desert, their rotors almost silent. Ryan's team sat in tense silence, the red glow of the cabin lights casting shadows over their faces. Each of them was focused, their minds on the mission ahead. The helicopters landed a few miles from Khalid's base, dropping the team in complete darkness. They moved swiftly, navigating the rocky terrain under the cover of night. The base came into view, a sprawling compound surrounded by high walls and patrolled by armed guards. "Daniels, what's the status on their defenses?" Ryan whispered into his comms. Daniels checked his tablet. "They've got infrared sensors and automated turrets, but I'm working on disabling them now. Give me 2 minutes." "Make it 1," Ryan replied. As they waited, Morales set up his sniper rifle, scanning the perimeter for guards. One by one, he silently eliminated them, his shots precise and deadly. Clear, Morales whispered. All right, Daniel said. Their systems are down. Let's move. The team breached the outer wall, moving like shadows through the compound. They reached the storage facility where the chemical weapons were housed. The doors were heavily secured, but Johnson quickly rigged an explosive charge to blow them open. Inside, rows of canisters containing the deadly chemicals were stacked neatly, each one marked with warning symbols. The sight was enough to make Ryan's blood boil. Plant the charges, Ryan ordered. Johnson and Emily worked quickly, placing explosives on the canisters and along the support beams of the facility. As they finished, the sound of shouting echoed through the compound. College men had discovered them. We've got company, Morales called out, taking cover and returning fire. Daniels, deploy the drones. Ryan commanded. Daniels launched 2 drones into the air. The small, agile machines zipped through the compound, targeting enemy soldiers with pinpoint accuracy. Explosions lit up the night as the drones neutralized college reinforcements. But the fight wasn't over. A familiar voice crackled over the loudspeakers. Americans, college voice boomed. You think you can come here and destroy everything I built? You will not leave this place alive. Ryan's jaw tightened. We'll see about that. Khalid himself appeared, flanked by heavily armed guards. The final showdown had begun. The firefight was intense. Khalid's men fought with desperation, but Ryan's team was relentless. They moved as a single unit, each member covering the other as they pushed through the compound. Finally, Ryan came face to face with Khalid. The warlord sneered, raising his weapon, but Ryan was faster. With a single shot, he took Khalid down, ending the threat once and for all. As the explosives detonated, the entire facility went up in flames. The chemical weapons were destroyed, and Khalid's reign of terror was over. Back at the extraction base, Ryan and his team stood together, battered but victorious. The mission had been a success, and thousands of lives had been saved. You did it, General Bennett said, shaking Ryan's hand. Ryan nodded. We sent the message loud and clear. And as the sun rose over the desert, one thing was certain.